So there's the wheel, nice and centered. So the GTS bike comes with a scrub brake. So with a scrub brake, they keep the frame nice and light for drag racing. But is it possible to throw a hydraulic disc brake on that bike for around 40 bucks? So there's quite a few different options out there to throw a hydraulic disc on the TriStar wheels on the GTS bike. For one, they have a hub adapter, but it's around 100 bucks. So they also have a disc that will bolt to the TriStar wheels, but you need longer bolts and some spacers. And then Azusa sells a brake disc hub that bolts to the wheels. And then of course on both of these, you gotta supply your own brake caliper. So they're all pretty good options, but they just cost more. So I have this disc. So this cost around 12 bucks on Amazon. So it's the same size as your Doodlebug Coleman disc, same diameter. I think it's around, what, 6 inches or so. So I think it'll be a great fit for the TriStar wheels. But the only thing is I have to drill the disc, which is easy enough. Then of course the kit comes with this brake bracket. And then I have the hydraulic disc brake. So this brake is around, I don't know, I think around 20, 25 bucks. So normally I would use a hydraulic disc brake with a little bit bigger pad. This one here has a pretty small pad, but I think it'll work pretty good for this application. So on my GTS bike, I'm running the wide rear tire, so I don't have a lot of room after I add the brake disc here. So if I don't use a very thin caliper, it'll hit the wheel. So this one here, it's very thin on the back. So I think it'll fit on here without hitting the tire. Otherwise, I would recommend using a brake with a bigger pad if you're running the narrow tire on the GTS bike. So this brake here, you can get for the exact same price that I paid for the small pad brake, about 25 bucks. And it's got a lot bigger pad. But the thing is, with this brake, it's really wide back here, and you'd have to run the disc quite a ways from the tire. And I don't have room with that wide rear tire on that GTS bike. So the brake I'm gonna use, I think will work just fine for this application because it's gonna have the scrub brake and the disc brake on the back. So I'm using the same brake on this bike, a small padded rear brake, but I have the GTS front brake kit on here. So with using both brakes, I haven't had an issue on wearing out the pads with the small brake because I'm using both brakes at the same time. So it'll be pretty much similar to the GTS bike. This bike is not only gonna have the disc brake, but it'll still have the scrub brake. So I'll have both brakes on the back. So I think it'll be fine for this application. So what's cool about this disc, it's a 3-hole disc, but the thing is, the holes are a little bit too narrow to fit on the TriStar bolt pattern. So that's an easy enough fix. So just center the disc with my socket. So you can do this stuff with regular old hand tools, and I'll drill my 3 holes. Okay, so I got the $12 disc drilled out to 5/16, same size as the bolts that came on the TriStar wheels. So now I'll pull the wheel off the bike and see if I can mount this disc. Yeah, a lot easier to work with this thing with the engine off. Seems how it wasn't bolted down anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and mount the brake handle and the master cylinder first, and then run the hose down to the back wheel. Got the handle and the hose ran down. It's kind of a trip seeing a hydraulic brake on a GTS bike. So now I got to figure out how far out I mount the disc. So I have room for the back of the brake so it doesn't touch the wheel. So it's close enough to the tire, but still far enough away where the bolts don't interfere with the mount. Another thing I'm gonna have to make fit is the brake bracket, the caliper bracket, because it has a 12mm hole which most of the bikes have, but the GTS bike has a little bit bigger axle. So I'll go ahead and drill it with my 5/8 drill bit and get it closer to 16 millimeter. I'm also going to have to cut about 1/8 of an inch off of this spacer to get the caliper to line up with the disc. So on these bolts, I'm going to need, I don't know, with a 6-inch wheel here, I'm going to need probably an 8-inch bolt, 7.5, 8-inch bolt. So with a 6-inch wide rear tire on this bike, I'm going to have to use longer bolts. So I picked up these 8-inch bolts from Amazon, I think for around $2 each. These bolts are M8 by 125 by 200 millimeter, which is approximately 8 inches, pretty close. Or you can grab 5/16 by 18 bolts that'll fit through the TriStar wheels. But anyway, Amazon had these for a couple bucks each. So these ought to work. So for my sprocket side here, I have to figure out what size spacers I need. So I need about a 1/2 inch space between the brake disc and the tire. So that should be enough space on there. I'll have to go over there and throw the caliper on here just to make sure. These 8-inch bolts, or close to 8-inch bolts, 200 millimeter, are just long enough for this wide wheel, or wide tire, and then my sprocket. So that's actually pretty good. Still have quite a bit of meat left on there. And I picked up this pack of nuts on Amazon for a few bucks. Lock nuts. Make sure my caliper will fit on here. We have enough space. Okay. Yeah, we just barely made it, but we made it. Now that I know I have enough length on these bolts, so I don't have to move the disc out farther, I'll go ahead and cut these off, so I don't need these sticking out. Another thing about this brake disc is it's so close to the tire, because the tire is wide, that I'm gonna have to cut a hole in the brake disc to be able to get the air chuck in there to pump up the tire. I mean, yes, air is overrated and brakes are overrated, but we might as well go ahead and do it anyway. We already got the bike apart. So if you run this disc on a standard size wheel, or more narrow wheel on the back, you'll be able to mount the disc farther away from the wheel, and then you'll be able to get the air chuck in there without having to cut a hole in the disc. All right, so I got some air in there. I got the hole cut out right there, so my chuck fits down in there. So another way you can make it easier to put air in the tire is buy a disc with the hole already cut out, so you can get the chuck down in there. But I guess you don't really want to make things too easy. So there's the wheel, nice and centered. So now I just got to figure out what length spacers I need. I mean, I can use pretty much all the spacers I had on here before. So I had these spacers on that side and those spacers on that side. On this side, I can leave the spacers the same. On this side, I'm gonna have to shorten up these spacers by this amount to make up the difference for this bracket being inside there. And pretty much all I have to do is get rid of one spacer. So I had to cut up a few different spacers to get the rear wheel to fit and to get it centered, but I got it on there. So we got the wheel nice and centered. So we clear on this side without the bolts hitting the frame. And then we clear on the brake side, or the disc side. You can definitely see, once this thing was done, that there was just not enough room with this wide tire for a bigger brake, a bigger padded brake. So this is pretty much the only brake I'm going to be able to get on here with this wide tire. But that's okay, because like I said, I have the scrub brake along with this disc brake, so it'll be okay. So I pretty much got everything done except for the clamp that holds the caliper in place so it doesn't spin when you grab the brake. So to figure out how far I needed this mount out, I clamped the brake to the disc, or put the brake on the disc, And then I zip tied the handle closed, so that way it centered the caliper on the disc. And then I figured out how far or how much spacer I needed in here. So I got it all lined up. So I easily could have welded a little L bracket on here to hold this, but I wanted to do the entire brake with no welding. Okay. So I think that turned out pretty good. So we got about, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch between the brake caliper and the tire. So that's plenty of room. So there you go, hydro brake on the GTS bike. So I think I spent around, I don't know, $10 more. I think it was around $55 total, because I did have to buy the bolts for the wide wheel and tire. And then the clamp, because I didn't weld on an L bracket. And the clamp cost, I think it was like $279 or something like that. So I think the total price was around 55 bucks or so, give or take. So, and like I said before, you can put a bigger padded hydraulic brake on here for about the same price, or pretty much exactly the same price, because the bigger padded brake is the same price on Amazon. So I do have a pretty sweet, affordable engine, stage 3 engine that's coming for this bike. So when the engine gets here, I'll have to throw it on there in the next video, and we'll have to test out the brake.